Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Season Ticket Holders. I'm your host, Dane Lillingstone, and I have a favourite returning guest for us today. He is the ARN sports lead, Melbourne Storm tragic, and very happy man after their win over the Broncos last round. I can tell you right now, Harrison Priebe, welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you, Dane. Third time is a charm. It's good to be back.
Got the hat trick, mate, Origin style, and you're obviously a big Melbourne Storm supporter. You would have been very happy with that win over Brisbane the other night.
Gritty. We're playing away. It's grinding out some tough wins. It's been very difficult without Jerome Hughes, but still finding a way to claw those wins at a vital time of the season.
You know, I'm a Broncos guy. We used to have our rivalry stretches back to our uni days. But I'm going to tell you, mate, before those incredible injuries, which we're going to get into a bit later in the show, I reckon the Broncos are up for it, mate. Up until Ezra and Adam Reynolds go down on the same play, I reckon we were in there.
Yeah, they put up a fight. I was nervous in those opening minutes. Yeah, they certainly defended well, but then I guess, that magical 20-minute mark for the Storm side of things was, really costly for Broncos, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Very, very sad for my boys, mate. And that top 8 battle, let me tell you, it is heating up because those spots are wide open. Some shock losses on the weekend, like the Sharks going down, the Dolphins getting smashed by the Roosters. There's some spots up for grabs, and we're going to get into that a bit later in the show. But the first thing, Harrison, I wanted to chat to you about, and it's a story that has been close to me over the last week, is Anthony Seibold and the Manly Sea Eagles. Now, they've lost 3 in a row at the moment. They're fighting to get in there. They're in 10th right now. They're 2 points behind the Dolphins, but their points differential is going to be a problem heading into the back end of the season. Do have some winnable games, but they lost against the Raiders on the weekend. Tough game. Now, I just want to give a bit of context to Anthony Seibold. Now, he had a bit of a blow-up with me personally as a journalist last week, and I want to get into that. But just some context is obviously we know how Manly's season has gone. Daly Cherry Evans said he wanted out of the club to start this year, which is a big blow. One club player, Queensland captain, will go down as one of the greats of the game. Said he wanted out. This saga has drawn out all season long. The rumours are very heavy that he's going to the Roosters on a $1 million deal with a year extension potentially there as well to get into coaching one day. That still hasn't been finalised. Now, mid-season, they were in a bit of a form slump. The rumours were that Anthony Seibold was off with the playing group, that he had a couple of games to save his career. Now, at the time, I was at one of the press conferences there. I think Brent Reid might have asked him about, making the top 8 and staying with the club. I followed up with a question about, do you feel the pressure right now? Because the external noise was he was going to be gone if they lost a few more. He responded with a quote that got picked up pretty widely, which is how we all die, how we compared it to some wars in Ukraine and Palestine around the world. Basically gave an interesting take, not one that I would have thought from a coach, and that got picked up pretty widely. Fast forward to now, they won 3, as you'd know, against Melbourne. They were riding pretty high, about a month ago now? That was a pretty crazy game. You remember that one, I'm sure?
I do. I like to forget it. One of the rare games that they've really just dominated Manly, and they have the habit of stringing together those wins, but have been by and large far too inconsistent and too many. I know injuries are always a factor, but the personnel that they have, they should be really contending for a final spot, and they've been sort of an underperforming side. Very underwhelming, I think.
Yeah, look, and that was the pinnacle there. They've now lost 3 in a row, and the rumours were sort of coming, the noise was coming, the stories were coming that, Anthony Seibold is off with some of the playing group, especially the senior playing group. And I'm talking about some of the biggest players at the club. Now, I went out there on Thursday to their final captain's call press conference with Anthony Seibold, and I've always had, I thought, a fairly good relationship with him, and he's always been very professional in dealings, at least just through the media and through our press conferences and running into him and things like that. And I did have to put a question to him about, we had strong mail in recent weeks that there was more drama in that dressing room and that some players were off him, and I've got very strong mail that is the case. Now, Harrison, I'm just going to go ahead and play you the snippet from the press conference because I do have it loaded up here, and then we'll get into what we thought about it.
Sounds good.
Daily Chair Evans and obviously, just with your relationship with everyone in the playing group, do you think you describe as a good relationship you have with everyone in the locker room at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to get a headline there, mate. I think it's pretty average question, but what do you want me to say?
Well, just been with the results at the moment, how it's going, see any issues that you sort of see behind the scenes that you feel well supported?
Yeah, definitely. I think we were a 50% season last week. We lost a pretty tough game against the Roosters. So, yeah, I feel like I'm well supported. I feel like I support the players well as, on the flip side of that. But, yeah, I think, I'm not going to really answer that because trying to get a headline, mate.
So there you go. I was trying to get a headline, Harrison, but like I said, what was your initial reactions? I think you were hearing that for the first time.
I think it sounds like a coach that's under pressure and can't, confidently answer the question. If he had support from the planning group, why aren't players coming out at midweek press conferences and saying they have his backing? For example, pretty much week in, week out, you have Melbourne Storm players down in Melbourne complimenting how influential Craig Bellamy has been on their career and their season and how much he's shaped that team. But you don't really hear that same level of noise when it comes to Manly stars and Anthony Seibold. There seems to be a bit of disconnect in that team. I don't know if the players and coaches are necessarily on the same page as each other. And it sounds like, he's sort of deflecting from the actual question there and the pressure maybe getting to him.
Yeah, look, and that was the impression that I had as well. If you weren't a coach under pressure, I think there is a lot of different ways you could have answered that question instead of attacking the question itself. Now, that got picked up. Now, I will say that he did shake my hand afterwards and he said, I just wasn't going to give you a headline, mate. All good. I have heard since that he was not happy with that line of questioning. I did hear that personally. But that is the job. And I had heard those rumors and stand by, not rumors, but I actually heard that story that is what is being said by certain players and 100% stand by that. And it's my job as a reporter to put that question to him. If I wasn't doing my job, then I would go to that presser and not ask any questions and be happy not to ask him about the pressure they're on, that they have lost 3 in a row, that there are these rumblings of player unrest within that locker room, and they are a big chance of not making the finals. And that's my job to go and ask that. No matter what you think of the question, I saw that did get picked up online, people saying average question by the reporter, classic scummy media, all those types of things that you come across on Twitter and Facebook. But that's my job. That's my job to go and ask those questions and to put people to account. The fact that it did elicit a response, like you said, to me, he might have said that's not a headline, but that is a headline. That response, there was a lot of different ways to handle that question, to come out and deflect or to be honest or to do every way that he thinks was the right way to handle as a coach. He was there at Brisbane in the toughest media pack there is in the NRL.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Broncos, Brisbane, NRL media, right? Like there's no tougher gig. To a wooden spoon, he took them. He didn't see at that club. The whole Wayne Bennett, Anthony Seibold drama, that was the biggest story in the NRL for a couple of years and what happened with his time at Brisbane. And I know he suffered a terrible time and everything like that. And there's plenty of stories out there about what happened afterwards. And I'm totally happy that he did get that job. But to me, responding like that and sort of coming back and attacking the question in itself, to me, that is a coach under pressure. And if these weren't stories that you thought were true or had some truth to it, we always say where there's smoke, there's fire, but you just wouldn't respond like that, would you?
He's doing the classic deflection, turning it back on the journalist style response. The fact that he said he thinks that's an average question instead of addressing the actual question itself. And he's just looking for a headline, which, in itself created the headlines and response. So it garners an even bigger reaction from the media.
And what I can tell you is that it wasn't just, obviously I then followed up with my packages for Fox Sports News. What I can tell you is I saw Channel 7 and Channel 10, and they ran with similar stories, if not even harder, mentioning the Trebojevic brothers specifically in players with with Tom and Jake, who aren't happy at the moment with something that's going on behind the scenes. And that's the stories that they led with their 6 p.m. bulletins as well. So that is the story that's out there. But in all fairness, and I wasn't trying to get a headline, like I said, it was my job to get a response to those, to that story. But they are in contention, like he did said, no matter the fact that they have had some crazy injuries in their forwards. They haven't had Hamole Olakawatu for a long time. they've lost a couple players. That Paseka, he went down early. Josh Aloiai, Nathan Brown, they've all missed. They've all come in and out. And for them to just be on the cusp still, it is a pretty good sign for Anthony Seibold and his coaching thing. There's no agendas there at all. Like, his team is 10th, and like I said, 2 points outside the 8 at the moment, and they're a real chance to still make the finals. What do we got? We've got 4 rounds left to go. Anything could happen. We saw some teams stumble. The Broncos are stumbling. The Sharks have stumbled. The Dolphins have stumbled. That opens the door for the Roosters and the Sea Eagles right now. But what have you made of the whole situation at Manly yourself, mate? Just as a reporter, looking in the media with the DCE stuff earlier in the year, to the rumblings of unrest, to the performance that they were in the finals contention a month ago, and they are now having to fighting over these final few rounds.
Yeah, but well, it all started with DCE announcing, his intention to leave Manly. Like, would you see Cameron Smith walk out on the Storm, like a Melbourne Storm legend who's given his, blood, sweat and tears to one club his whole life? The same goes for DCE. He's given it his all. He's for Manly over a long period of time, and the fact he just comes out at the start of the year saying, "I'm not going to be at this club at the end of the year," and the speculation grows on what's the root cause behind that. The fact that Tommy Turbo switched to centre mid-season, yeah, he had a few good games there, but he's a fullback, taking your gun fullback and making a positional switch mid-season to shake things up. I don't know if that was necessarily the right call, and the reports I've heard that Tommy wasn't very happy with that move to centre. He much prefers to play fullback. So I think the pressure grows, and I think those comments that Seibold made will only put more pressure on himself. If they continue to lose games and miss out on a final spot, then the questions will be continued to be asked and the pressure will grow on him. And I think it's the start of maybe a coach that maybe does feel that pressure.
Look, and I totally agree. And I'm going with this with a completely open mind. Like I said, no agendas. Now, there was a story since that press conference last week that apparently there has been a meeting with the Manly chair and majority owner, Scott Penn. They're saying they're backing him and he has their full support to remain as their coach next year. Now, he's still got 2 years to run on his deal. And like I said before, their forward injury list was immense this season. So you would think at this rate, unless something crazy happens, like they lose all their remaining games or something like that, that he would still be there. And I do rate Anthony Seibold. I think he's got a lot of talents as a coach, but I just don't know if he's got the talent or the ability at the moment to take them to that very next level. I don't know if that's the playing list or it's the coaching ability.
I totally agree. I don't understand why Manly would hand Seibold a long-term contract to begin with. He has no sort of real accolades to his coaching career. He's had struggles in the past. He was axed by the Broncos. We all know how that went. And I just don't understand why they would keep him long-term. And I guess there's, a risk of, is the culture, is the game for Manly going to improve in the long run? Are we going to see them make finals this year, next year, or are the struggles going to continue under Seibold's guidance? And I guess it's a risk that they've taken, and it could be costly if they do decide to cut ties with him early.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting one to play out. I know there was also a story earlier in the year that they were grooming Michael Ennis to one day take over at the 2027, I think what the end of the deal was. I think they've got Matt Ballin as well, who's sort of floating around, who has a lot of experience in the Queensland setup as well. But it will be interesting. They've obviously taken another big blow on the weekend. Jake Trbojevic, he suffered his third, I think a Cat 1 HIA of the season. That's going to rule him out for next week, their captain, their spiritual leader. So that's another big blow. And DC, you've got to say, with all the noise happening around him, he's starting to show his age a bit this season. Obviously dropped from Queensland after game 1. He hasn't really been leading them around the park, right, to what we've been used to seeing.
No, he's like, since I guess his origin dropping or his origin axing, he hasn't really sort of responded in a way that I would have, or I guess a lot of fans would have expected him to respond. You sort of, use that, you would use that axing as sort of a motivation to steer Manly to success. And he hasn't quite delivered on that as captain of the club.
Yeah, and, I love DC. We're obviously, you and I are both Queensland. There's no secret about that. But, it's going to be interesting to see how he can close out the season. Now, just to break down their run home, they do have the Tigers on Sunday at Allianz. Then they host the Dolphins at Four Pines, and away to the Dragons at Jubilee, and then their final round game at Four Pines Park, hosting the Warriors at Four Pines. So, mate, those are four very, very winnable games, right?
They are winnable, but that's a very tough run. We see how energetic the Tigers are playing at the moment. We have the Dolphins fighting for a top 8 spot, so they're going to be desperate. The Warriors too, they're looking to keep that, they're looking to earn a spot in the top 4 and keep their place in the top 8 even. So in fact, they come up against some pretty desperate teams. So the run home isn't an easy one for Manly. And yeah, I guess with their roster too, it's such an aging roster. Yes, there's some young talent there, but I think they rely on their old stars too much, and it might be taking a bit of a toll on the older players to sort of, this expectation on them to step up, and it's hard work for them.
Yeah, you're right. And I think they're probably lacking a little bit in the forwards. Like, obviously, with the injuries, they've got electric outside backs. Tommy Turbo, like you said, Lehigh Hopewadi was out injured with an AC joint, copped a head knock as well. He's been their long-term anointed future fullback. And, Tom played at centres. He's a team man. But I'm sure privately, I don't think he, like you mentioned before, is happy to not be their number one. Now, I did also ask Seibold last week, is that the plan for Tommy to remain at number one for the rest of the year? And he was still very non-committal. He said, I've always said it's a week-to-week thing. It's game situational. That seems crazy to me, though, that you don't just have one of the superstars of the game. Was it the 2021 season where he was the greatest player on the planet and just carved up Queensland and scored 3 tries for fun and tore through tackles? It was around that period. Obviously, he's had a terrible one with injuries. One of the nicest guys in rugby league, if not the nicest guy. Him and Jake are probably the 2 nicest guys in rugby league. But a terrible run with injuries. And, when he's fit, you do want him to be your number one. But it does probably open him up to a few more injuries, but still, when he's fit and frying, he's got to be a fullback, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's sort of not committing to where he'll play week in, week out, whether it'll be permanent or temporary. Is he going to play fullback this week? Is he going to play centre this week? I think that kind of makes the team a little bit disjointed, and there's not much flow to the team. I think a good coach knows exactly where each player, even including injuries, is going to play, what their role is, and how they perform that role in that position. And I think it's just seems a bit disjointed looking inside at the Manly club right now.
You're right. And at first glance of that draw, I did probably go, winnable games. But you're right. When I was listening to you talk, you're talking about some desperate teams. A Dragons side who just showed a fight against the Sharks on the weekend. A Warriors side who are slipping, but will be fighting potentially to remain in the finals. Yeah. A Dolphins side, like you said, that are fighting for their first ever finals campaign. And a Tigers side that's had one of the best seasons in the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah. So it is going to be tough, mate, and it's going to be interesting. They obviously are going to get Jamal Fogarty next year, which is going to be a massive in for them to replace DCE because he's playing amazingly for the Raiders.
He's been great.
So Seibold does get to see out. Yeah, if Seibold does get to see out next season, he will be interesting with Luke Brooks, I suppose would be the halves combination. Tommy Turbo at fullback, we don't know. They've obviously got Lehigh Hopewadi, and then maybe they need to go to market for a couple of forwards there. But wait and see. Very interesting. It was an eventful week for me, Harrison. I'll keep you posted next time at Four Pines Park. I'm sure I'll get a warm reception. I don't know what I did. I don't know. I guess that's my journalist mark. I don't think I've had a coach quite react like that to me yet. So this is going to be a first in my media career.
He's probably got your picture on the dartboard now.
Jeez, I hope not. No, I can't wait to go back out there again, and I'll keep everyone well updated on what's it like out there at Manly. I do love going out in the Manly. It's a beautiful spot out there. Plenty of nice cafes, good coffee out there, mate. You been out there?
No, I haven't been out there, but I've heard good things. I should venture out sometime next year.
Yeah, go and look for the Dane Fox Sports News dartboard.
I do love Brookvale Oval. It's a great, one of the best suburban grounds out there.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful. They actually made us do the press conference out in the rim while it was freezing, raining, cold in Sydney on Thursday morning. So maybe that was a precursor to what was to come.
That's how much they love the media.
Yeah. The frosty reception, Harrison. That's how I would describe it. Now, mate, enough of that. I do want to get into, we did mention off the top, but the Broncos Storm, it was shaping up as a crucial game for the finals. And look, I'm a Broncos fan. looking at that team on paper, they hadn't really put it together consistently. They'd shown patches in a handful of games or not. But then like they had that loss against the Eels recently, then bounced back with a big win over the Bunnies. And then and they looked really good against the Storm, I thought, in patches as well. But obviously one of the craziest plays you'll ever see, I don't think anyone's ever seen it in rugby league history, to have an intercept pass by Xavier Coates chased down, to have your Ezra Mem starting 6 pull up lame, for Adam Reynolds, your starting halfback, to pull up lame, for Selwyn Cobbo to pull off an absolutely incredible try-saving tackle down the other end. But then the happiness of that quickly faded away as Broncos fans realised that their starting 6 and 7 had both done hamstrings. What are the odds, mate? Both done hamstrings within, I would say, 10 seconds of each other. And their season, in all honesty, mate, I thought they were going to be real grand final contenders. They were fully fit. From 1 to 17, they had one of the best teams on paper, if not, top 2, top 3 on paper. And all they needed was a little run of form and a little bit of confidence in Melbourne. Even if they had ended up being like a nice, tight, close game, I think they would have taken a lot of confidence out of that. And they still held on, even the fact that they had to do a massive shuffle to replace those 2 players. But to have those 2 go down, have you ever seen anything quite like that? You must have been licking your lips as a Melbourne fan, be honest.
I don't know who had the voodoo doll out and the pins, but that was I've never seen a team that decimated in the halves in one play, one fell swoop, just to see both those star halves go down. It was a cruel blow for Broncos fans. I can't imagine the reaction from Broncos supporters in that the 21st minute? It would have just been like heart in the mouth, just shattered. But as a Storm fan, I don't know how Craig Bellamy reacted. He must have been just like pumping his fist in the air because that was a game changer. It was on a knife's edge at that point. Really tight. First 20 minutes, Broncos were ahead by a penalty goal. So they came down to Melbourne to really test themselves against one of the benchmark teams of this season, and it was all on the line. And until that moment, it was game on, and they showed that they could be, a serious threat come September. So to lose those 2 players is a huge blow. But I think there's, there could be good and bad for the Broncos' fortunes heading into September, I think.
I was going to say it was devastating. And we didn't even mention the fact that Selwyn Cobbo, who just only recently come back into the team from Queensland Cup, then he does a 3rd hamstring injury in the second half, 3 hamstring injuries. Now, the wash up from that is that Adam Reynolds, luckily, is the least hit of those 3. His hamstring tear, they're saying 4 weeks. So if they do make the first round of finals, which we'll get into a little bit in a second, but I think they still will make the 8. Yep. He would be back. Ezra Mam and Selwyn Cobbo both looking at closer to 6 weeks on the sidelines for their hamstring injuries. So that would just about rule them out unless this team can somehow make the prelims in the grand final, or unless, they're somehow ahead of schedule. But I think they're pretty accurate with these types of things these days. So, and look, I will say that I think, and Mike Maguire said after the game, that the heart that they showed to still hang on, because they still had attacking opportunities. They just kept blowing them. You know what I mean? They still, against one of the best teams they hadn't beat Melbourne, do I want to say in Melbourne since 2016? I think I had it written down here somewhere, but it's a long time since... It's something like that. I mean, I know we beat you guys on the run to the 2023 grand final, which I think might be the last time we beat you. But down there in Melbourne, just always an extremely tough ask. I think they can take a lot out of that. Mate, just from the outside looking in, I'll give you my thoughts in a second, but is that the Broncos' premiership hopes over?
I think they have their back end of the draws pretty favourable. I think they have games against the Knights, Cowboys, teams below them on the ladder, and then they face the Storm again at Suncorp in the final game. So that's going to be a tough run home. So I think the back end of the draw is favourable for them. Another plus side, I think Billy Walters. I'm assuming Billy Walters and who's the other player?
Are you talking about Corey Pakes or Ben Hunt? Or
Ben Hunt. Ben Hunt. I'm assuming that they'll be the halves combination, and I think Billy Walters and Ben Hunt, both experienced players. I don't know how they'll go potentially as a halves combo, but they have a wealth of NRL experience, and if they can sort of combine and form a solid partnership, but I think the weight of expectation rests on the shoulders of Reece Walsh. I think too many times this season we've seen rocks and diamonds from Reece Walsh. When he's on, he can be a game changer, but he's had a lot of quiet games this year. So I think this next few weeks is an opportunity for him to step up and really own and put his fingerprints on this team in Reynolds and absence. But when it comes to finals, I think it's going to be a big test because one, you question the fitness of Adam Reynolds if he does come back, and the halves combo. Are they going to be fit enough for finals in those big games, or are they going to falter? Are they going to have enough match fitness?
You're 100% right, mate. The thing with Reece Walsh is we all know what he can do. I just saw the latest Daily Telly article about the fastest players in rugby league. Reece Walsh remains the fastest player that's been tracked this year for the Broncos, so he's still got the most speed out of any player there. We know he can break the line. We know he can trick the defence. He's got a decent kicking game, which they are going to have to rely on more now that they have lost their starting halves. But it's just his errors. Even against Melbourne, you saw how he pushed forward. He was making a lot of play. That Broncos had that mini break from half field, and he goes out to the wing. I think it was still on his second or third tackle, and he throws it like 2-3 meters forward. It's just those extra little errors in his game that he needs to just get out. He always just seems to push it just that one play too many. He doesn't seem to like getting tackled very much, especially in attack when you're everywhere in the 20, 30, 40 of the opposition zone. He just always wants to get rid of the ball when sometimes the play, if it's not the fifth, is just to take the tackle and let them reset for the next play. It doesn't have to end. Every play doesn't have to end in a try. If it's not the fifth tack.
I think he needs to take a team-first mentality heading into this back end of the season. Like, they are under pressure. It's going to be hard for them. So he really needs to sort of step up, take ownership, play it safe, and work with his teammates instead of the sort of fancy individual stuff.
100%. And I respect so much that he wants to be that guy for the Broncos because as a supporter, as an analyst, whatever you want to call it, you love to see those players who do want to take the team and put it on their shoulders. But as long as they do it in like a smart way, because right now Walsh is just still, I know it's been a story for the last year or two now, probably a couple of years. He just has too many silly errors in his play. I think he's been, one of the most error-riddled players in the game now for the last couple of seasons as well. He just pushes it that one little step too much. He has games where he can show that he does have restraint, and then he backs it up with games like, obviously that was an extreme situation on Thursday night where he did need to step up and do those types of things, but there's maybe just that comes with experience. He still is so young. He's got years to still hone his craft. He just needs to learn to tone it down, not to 11, just maybe to like 8 or 9.
And we can see with the Storm spine, they do that so efficiently. When one player drops out, like Jerome Hughes, a Tyron Wishart comes in and really sort of stabilizes that spine, and they all still manage to flow and work together as a team instead of more individual stuff. Like, you still have the flashy stuff from Cameron Munster, Ryan Pappenhausen, but that spine is really connected, and they have the means to sort of overcome those adversities when there are injuries to their star players.
No, you make a good point, mate. And that is going to be the question now. You touched on it, but they are very lucky that they bought Ben Hunt. The Broncos put Ben Hunt in the offseason. That could turn out to be a masterstroke because we're recording this on a Monday and we will see the teams on Tuesday afternoon. But I think there's no doubts that Ben Hunt will be their starting 7 now, the role that he did play for the Dragons for the last number of seasons. The question is who partners him. Now, they had to use Tony Staggs from the centres at 6. I think that would be the worst case scenario. He's one of the best informed centres in the game at the moment. I don't think they'll be doing that long term. I think Billy Walters has been one of the Broncos' best over the last month in playing a bench utility role, but he has obviously mainly been used as a hooker in the NRL. But I was reading some interesting quotes from him in the Courier Mail that he actually spent half the preseason training in the halves. So maybe a stroke of genius by Michael Maguire. And if that was what Madge was thinking in the preseason, I think that all leads to Ben Hunt and Billy Walters being the halves. And I have no problem with that because one thing the Broncos have had for the last few seasons is an overabundance of hookers in their stocks. They've got Corey Pakes, who's been plugging along for right now. He's fighting for a deal. I dare say he would come into the 9. And they've also got Tyson Smoothie. I think he played for the Storm for a little while. He's come in and he would, I imagine, be the 14. Now, if Madge was going to go big balls play, mate, he does have some younger guys in Q Cup. Now, Jock Madden is one. He's off to the Tigers. He's returning to the Tigers next season. If they wanted a ready-made replacement in the halves, I think he would be your guy. Going outside of that, you've got Josh Rogers, who's a 29-year-old experienced Q Cup campaigner. He's played 7 games for the Broncos since 2023. Or, mate, if you really want to shoot your load big style, you would go to Kobe Black. He's a 19-year-old. He's dubbed as the Broncos' next big thing in the halves. They're grooming him to be one of the big successors to Adam Reynolds, but he's probably still a few years off NRL. Obviously, playmakers take their time. I think I read he had 5 try assists in the last 3 games or something, so he's in a bit of form. I think he has got 8 try assists and 5 tries total for the season for South Logan Magpies. So if Madge really wanted to pull the trigger and see if they could still make something of the season and they feels like they've got nothing to lose, I would say give him a crack, but I think that would be a pretty crazy play. I think Walters and Hunt is the smart money. That would be right. Trucking a 19-year-old with a month to go, pretty crazy, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if they're out of finals contention, I'd say, give that next generation maybe a go, an opportunity, but they still have, a shot of, potentially even making the top 4. And I think you have to go with that experience, and Billy Walters and Ben Hunt carry that experience. No doubt they have trained together a lot during the preseason and even during Origin period, in quiet periods. I'm sure they have some sort of combination that they can bring out, and who knows, it could be a successful combination. But that's what it's very fortunate the Broncos that they have that sort of experience as backups to players that carry a wealth of like Ben Hunt. Obviously is a representative, played for Origin, played for his country, so that's he'll be steering that halves ship, and I think it'll be good for Billy Walters and his development too. He's been around for a few years now, and I think this is his shot to really step up and make his mark in this Broncos outfit and show what he has.
Mate, I love Billy Walters. I know he got teased a little bit by some, trolls online about being Kevin's son when he did play, but he's always deserved his spot in this Broncos team. He's been one of the real underrated players of the last few seasons they've played. He played a couple games for Melbourne back in the day, Q Cup campaigner. He's 31 now, and he has had experience in the halves and hooker. So I think him and Ben Hunt could be a successful halves combination. And like I said, Billy Walters has been in really good form, so I can't wait to see it. We mentioned the draw just before, mate. But it's going to be pretty fun as a fan, I must say, to watch this final month of football. The Dolphins in the battle for Brisbane, Saturday 5:30. That is a massive game. The Dolphins just got 60 put on them by the Roosters. Was it 60? It was 60, wasn't it? So that is going to be absolutely intense, and that rivalry already has become the biggest rivalry for those two clubs in the short time that the Dolphins have been in existence. Then they've got to go down to Newcastle on a Sunday afternoon against a night side who knows how to really read them, but you'd think they would get the win there. Then they've got to go up to North Queensland and do the traditional Queensland derby on a Saturday night in Townsville. And I will say, I hate the draw for this reason, and you know why. It's Broncos Storm again in the final round of the competition on a Thursday night again. Why would you schedule the exact same game a month apart in different... I have no idea what they're thinking. You could use ChatGPT and fix this problem, surely.
Bring out a better draw.
Mate, a 6-year-old with a pen and paper could do a better job. Like, why are they doing these games a month apart, mate? Why?
I have no idea. They claim think it was because of stadium availability and, teams playing on certain days. But I think it's insulting for the fans, and it's tiresome for the fans too. You don't want to see your team play you don't want to see Storm Broncos play, once and then play again in a couple of weeks' time. And then there's a possibility they could meet in the finals as well, 3 times in the space of basically a month. I think it's fatiguing for the fans. Fans don't want to see it. Surely there's a way to make out the draw that's beneficial for the fans, beneficial for the teams, that works a lot smoother.
Mate, it's ridiculous. And from memory, it's happened the last few years. I happen to know the Broncos Melbourne seem to always play each other twice in the back end of the year. I don't know why they've just... Yeah. Why is that a thing? Outside of the Queensland teams, the Broncos-Melbourne rivalry is just one of the biggest rivalries those two clubs have. They played each other in the 2006 grand final. Yeah. They had a storied history in finals games since then. Melbourne have had the wood so much on Broncos. I know as a Broncos fan, I love beating Melbourne, honestly, more than any other team. That's just how, that's the rivalry, and as a fan, you love to see it.
I'd almost steal Eddie Maguire's idea from the AFL, float his idea, which was teams play each other once, and then the back end of the season, you built the back end of the season on rivalry teams facing off. And I think that would build way more excitement and interest instead of this lazy back end of the draw where you have multiple teams facing each other just weeks apart.
No, I don't know much about that, mate, but I totally agree with that concept of just, getting out all the teams once, but, in sort of some chronological order, which I know must be hard to try and do it to leave the back end open, but I'm sure there's a way to do it, right? And then, because it looks like they've done that, but in like a soft way. The fact that the Broncos are playing Melbourne, Dolphins, and Cowboys in 3 of the last 4 games, like those are rivalry games, and that's good. But it's just the fact that they already played Melbourne and then do it again 4 games later. That just seems ridiculous. But mate, as far as the finals go and the Broncos, I just think that looking at them now, they are 6th. They're on 28 points. Losing against the Eels has really hurt because they could be in 5th now, right behind Penrith for the 5th spot. But the fact they dropped that game, they're behind the Warriors, the wheels are coming off quickly for them. Their points differential is only 8. And the Broncos is 104. So if the Warriors keep going on their slide and the Broncos really have the chance to jump them. Now, the thing that goes in the Brisbane's favour is the Sharks losing to the Dragons on the weekend, which was a shock upset. I don't think many people picked the Dragons. That means the Sharks didn't jump the Broncos and they remain in 7th on the same amount of points. They've only got a 35-point plus points differential. So Broncos 104 plus and is going to sort of bank them well for the back end of the season. And that's a big part of the reason why I think they will still hold on to the 8th spot. Then you've got the Dolphins even, who if they had a 1, they would have jumped the Broncos as well. They're on 119, so they've got the points differential to match it with the best. They've got the 2nd or 3rd best attack in the league. They know when to put on points. And then obviously the Roosters now are tied on 26 with them and help their points differential of 72. And then, of course, our favourite club, the Sea Eagles, like we talked there, 2 points behind them as well, but negative 10 points differential. So based on that's how... what do you think, mate? So in reading this, I'm thinking Broncos, I think the Sharks, as long as the wheels don't fall off, they stand. Everyone's fighting for that 8th spot. I thought before the round that 8 is set. I thought if I just go from top to bottom, I go Raiders, Storm, Bulldogs, Panthers. That's pretty much the top 4. Then you've got Warriors, Broncos, Sharks. I thought that would just be the 5 to 7. And then they're sort of fighting for the 8th spot between Dolphins, Roosters, Sea Eagles. But I really thought the Dolphins were the real deal and they would be 8th. One thing I do want to point out is losing Herbie Farnworth. Even though he seems like just a centre, he's the best centre in the game.
He's their attacking
amount of tries.
Weapon.
Mate, the amount of tries, I know from back in his Brisbane years, he was part of that 2023 grand final team. The way he gets return kick meters, the way he just makes meters, the way he creates opportunities, I would argue he is the best centre in the game. I think he's won the Dally M for that the last year or 2 years in a row. Good chance of winning it again this year. He is a massive blow that people probably aren't thinking about as well.
Yeah, and losing Felice Kafusi didn't help too. He was like their big... he's their big forward enforcer for that Dolphins team. He's the hard hitter that sort of really sets the tone for the Dolphins pack. So having those 2 out against the Roosters, big blow. But as he mentioned, Herbie Farnworth, he guides their attack. He's their attacking weapon and they desperately need him. So that hamstring injury that he suffered, huge, costly. But hard to imagine the Roosters put 60 on them and the Roosters still aren't in the top 8. So it's a tight rope to take that top 8 place.
Who do you see sneaking in there? I just sort of read it out to you. Do you think there will be changes to that? Do you think the Roosters or the Sea Eagles come in?
I'd like to see the Dolphins. I think they have enough quality in that team, enough excitement. The halves are pretty decent. I think if they can sort of put in a bit more discipline, hopefully they respond from that thrashing at the weekend. I think they can potentially hang on, but it's going to be tough. They got teams breathing down their neck. There's no margin for error these last few games of the season, and I think it's a good opportunity for those teams to strike. This is where the it really counts for those teams.
100%, mate. And look, I'm going to stick with that 8. And I did want to ask you, this is the tough question at the top end. I know who you're probably going to say, but Who right now do you think are and should be the premiership favourites? Obviously, we've got the Raiders, like I said, 2 points clear, still odds on to win the minor premiership. But then you have the Storm and Bulldogs, both just 2 points behind them on 36. Storm with the best points differential in the league at 248. So if they do finish equal with any team, they will be on top. Who is your pick to take it out right now?
It is so wide open at the moment. The fact that the Raiders lost to the Dragons a couple of weeks ago just shocked me. The Bulldogs, they've been pretty consistent, but they've had a few shaky losses recently too. I think the Panthers, they are scary at the moment. A team that was running last basically midway through the season, all of a sudden finds himself in the top four. They look unstoppable. They're just building towards September. Very scary prospect. Melbourne Storm, I think they're doing enough, but not doing it convincingly. I think they're very bit ill-disciplined at the moment. So they need to sort of get that in check. They're winning, but yeah, really not winning in convincing fashion. And I think, even Craig Bellamy's pointed that out, that they sort of need to find better discipline towards the back end of the season, but it's such a tight race. I think any one of those top four teams can, on their day, can spring an upset or, claim the premiership.
So your tips to Panthers?
Oh, I'd hate to see it.
So you're going for 5 in a row?
Yeah. Nathan Cleary, you just never know with a team with Nathan Cleary. There's such a well-drilled team, and arguably they have the best momentum at the moment, but can they hang on? That's a big question. If I had to count right now, I think it'll be a Storm, maybe Panthers grand final. You just never know. Yeah.
All right, mate. We'll take that. Well, like I said to you earlier, Broncos, I really thought they were up there, and the only way they could get back up there and make a crazy last run would be if Adam Reynolds comes back in that final sort of round, him and Hunt form a combination with Billy Walters at 9. That's the only way I could see them still doing it. The team that I want to see win now is the Raiders. I think Canberra, I think they're going to be everyone's second team. I've said this before, but I think they will be everyone's second team heading into this back end of the season. Bulldogs, of course, would be up there as well, but I think you'd find more fans would be happy to see Canberra win. I always have big admiration for Ricky Stewart. I watched a little feature they did on Xavier Savage for Indigenous round. Mate, it is incredible. I don't know if I'm biased because I lived in Cairns for a few years, but they took him up there with Morgan Smithies and Hudson Young. Got to see him connect with culture up there, and it was awesome, man. It was a bit emotional as well. Ricky Stewart got emotional. Xavier Savage got emotional. It's obviously the influence that Ricky has on his players, whether it comes to the youth or the experience. He is one of the best man managers. I don't think you'd want to coach against him, any weak-gutted dogs out there. But I think if you were with Ricky Stewart, he's the type of guy who would back you to the hilt, mate. You know what I mean? He's the loyalty and passion that you want to see in a coach. And I think what he's been able to do with that Canberra side, he even said it himself in this feature story. It's half an hour. You can find it on KO. I recommend you go check it out. The way he's brought it together, he said he's never seen a group as close as this. And you could really see it in the way the players are there together and the mix of youth and talent. Jamal Fogarty's there leading the ship. The young outside backs, Ethan Strange being talked about, a Kangaroos call-up. Kyle Weeks, they've got an incredible team right now. It's whether they can match that finals experience, which, as you said, Penrith are going to be coming, Melbourne are going to be coming. They've been there. They've done it all before. And whether they need a second year. But Canberra do remind me of this young upstart team, almost like a 2023 Broncos side that has the talent. They're in good form. And I dare say that they could take it all out.
I think Canberra Raiders are one of the premiership smokies. And you can hold me to this maybe in a few years' time. But I think looking at the Canberra Raiders, it looks like they're building a dynasty. Like, this is their era. They are trying to replicate what the Panthers did in 2020 to build a successful team for the long run. You look at that list, they're all young, hitting their prime, signed pretty much long term. They're like a consistent group, and I think they are building towards years and years of success, keeping that core group together. And the fact that they're on top of the table now with this group will only add to their confidence. And I think we could be, in the years to come, we could be seeing a Canberra Raiders outfit that could be, playing for premierships for years to come. They're a scary prospect. And Ricky Stewart's created, something I think special with that group.
Totally agree, mate. I'm going to go Raiders Penrith grand final, passing of the torch moment, and it goes to Canberra. There you go. And I don't want to spend too long on this, but obviously it is an exciting battle down the other end of the table as well. The battle for the wooden spoon. We did have Spoon Bowl just gone on the weekend, and it was interesting to see. Who would you say at the moment would be your favourites? Because obviously we saw the Rabbitohs just pip the Titans in a bit of a cracker, which means that right now the Titans are down on 16. The Rabbitohs are on 18 and have a bye. And then the only other team now would be the Knights, who have a similar points differential. They're 2 points above the Titans. So it's going to be interesting. But you'd have to say Gold Coast firmly in the box seat now to take it out.
Yeah, I think Gold Coast will unfortunately claim that unwanted tag of the wooden spoon. Rabbitohs, considering they've been decimated with injuries, suspension. They had their sixth captain last week in Jai Arrow. Like, that is a club that is like struggling. And the fact that they could likely avoid the wooden spoon. It hasn't been, it's been a rubbish season for poor old Wayne Bennett. But
no, mate, and in Bennett we trust though, right? That just goes to show the quality of Wayne Bennett. He said it's the worst injury crisis he's ever seen. They lose Jack Whiten to a month in suspension. Wayne Bennett was furious about that. He got me one-on-one and said it's ridiculous by the NRL, and he really hosed it down for me one-on-one on the side of the camera after press conference. He was not happy. And obviously during the week they told Lewis Dodd, their big money English recruit, on rumoured to be 650 to 700,000 a year. Wayne Bennett basically said he's not up to it. He's been told to leave. So pretty crazy, mate. But you'd have to go Titans right now, right? So it'd be interesting. Obviously, Knights are still there, like I said, but Gold Coast would be odds on. Harrison, mate, we have broken it down. Your Melbourne boys are going to have a good chance, but I think they'll go down in the final round to the Broncos, right? That's the dream result. Broncos deny Melbourne minor premiership in final round of the season to make the
rare win,
headline. Whoa, now it's a rare win, man. Heat check by this guy, being a depleted Broncos side. Harrison, it's always good fun, mate. Remember when you used to tag me in the ladder when the Broncos behind Melbourne for like 6 years straight? I didn't forget.
I still do.
I think I blocked you, so. I didn't realize you still did that.
Nah, love it. I love a Storm win. They they never let me down, which is good. Hopefully, we can go one better this year, but it's going to be, an exciting competition. I cannot wait for September.
Bring it on. Finals football just around the corner. One more month of competition, mate. I know I can't wait. Can't wait to see if the Broncos can turn it around, to see if the Raiders can go all the way. There's plenty of interesting storylines, both bottom and top of the ladder. Harrison, Priebe, thank you very much for once again joining Season Ticket Holders.
Good to be back. Thank you.
Legend, mate. Thank you, everyone, for giving us love and supporting us. You can catch us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Give us a follow. Give us a like. Thanks for all your support. Take care. We'll see you soon.